All right, here we go. Episode 3 of Two Plain Sports podcast. Welcome back. As you can tell, Brandon's not here this week. He's on a little vacation with his lady, so hopefully they're having fun. They're in Nashville, but let's just get it going here. First thing we want to touch on, Bryce Thompson. He was heavily recruited by Lon and Boynton when he was coming out of high school, and now he's in the transfer portal. He initially chose to be a Jayhawk, but he's obviously changed his mind with the opportunity to transfer schools. What do you think of what's going to happen to his college basketball career, bro?
I mean, I would like to think that his recruitment is going to be mainly based out of Oklahoma between OU and OSU. I honestly thought that's the way it was for a long time whenever he was coming out of high school, and then the last second it seemed like Bill Self came out of nowhere and started recruiting him. And I mean, I don't blame the kid for getting out of there. He wasn't getting a ton of minutes and he wasn't getting a ton of time. But if he chooses to change his, he's obviously going to change schools. I guess he could go back in theory. I mean, between OU and OSU, you think about the rosters. I mean, Kate Cunningham's going to be gone, obviously, and then you have a lot of turnover on OU's roster. I think he has a very good shot of being able to transfer and start almost immediately, or if not, then play significant minutes off the bench. I do think it's going to be a bedlam battle between Boynton and Moser for the very first time, just not on the court. Um, I don't really know which way this one will go. My gut tells me I would put money on Oklahoma State. Boynton's a little more established, and has shown that he can put a top player in the league. And Moser hasn't had the chance, obviously, since he's been at Loyola. So I think that's kind of the way I'm feeling about it.
Yeah, I think I agree with you there. I think that Moser, being his first year at Oklahoma is definitely going to be a little bit of a not deterrent, but it's going to be a roadblock to recruit some of those higher name or bigger
Mm-hmm.
name guys. It's going to be tough for them to maybe buy in because they've never seen what a Peter Moser led Sooner team will look like. And Boynton obviously just got extended for 7 years. They got in the tournament. Like you said, he produced
Mm-hmm.
an NBA talent. And even though Moser said, going back to his press conference last week, that he's going to treat these kids as professionals if their goal is to be an NBA player. But he's,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, he hasn't proven that he can do that quite yet. But obviously, we believe that he can and he will.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's no doubt in my mind that he will at some point. I just don't know how it's going to turn out this year.
Yeah, and I think if it was a year or two down the road, I would think it's more of a coin flip. But speaking about, Oklahoma basketball, I know in our last podcast I touched on CJ Noland. He was our top signee out of Texas, and he was a really strong, heavily recruited guy, but from a bunch of other schools. He actually came out and tweeted a few days ago that it's a picture of him edited with OU, and he still said it's still Boomer. So, which is very good reassurance from Oklahoma, retaining him, because that would have been a big loss for us. But I mean, also, and then you saw Alston Mason, I believe his name is, that actually signed, or not signed, but committed while we were actually doing the podcast last week, and we didn't see that till after the deal. So, and I believe today Alston Mason actually officially signed. So I think that is the first signee of the Porter Moser era, which is pretty exciting. I mean, he was a 3-star kid, but hey, at this point, we'll take what we can get. I know we're going to probably be in the transfer portal, looking for some forwards and some big men and figuring some stuff out.
Yeah, it's going to be a very different Sooner team next year, but it is good to see that Moser is hitting the ground running on recruitment. Excuse me, on recruitment with, like you said, Nolan reaffirming that he's going to be a Sooner. And I think if I remember correctly, he was actually also recruiting Nolan to Loyola when he was there. And
Mm.
obviously, it shows that the brand made a difference for that guy wanting to pick OU over Loyola, which I mean, obviously Loyola went on their run last year, but I think it's fair to say that Loyola has done as well as Oklahoma over the last 10 years, and especially with Porter
Mm-hmm.
Moser as their head coach. But to move on, I don't know if do you have any final thoughts on that?
No, I'm more so. I'm just excited to see what's going on and what we're the momentum that we generate in the transfer portal over the next, 3 or 4 months, and then we get into some practices and some games this fall. But
Yeah.
that's really all we've got. I unless something earth shattering happens between now and the start of the season, I don't see a whole lot happening. But
Yeah.
yeah, let's move on.
Me neither, but we'll be sure to keep you guys updated via Twitter and on the podcast on any new signings or any rumors that are going around on what the team could look like for next year. But let's just quickly touch on the Masters. We talked about it last week. I thought that somehow Dustin Johnson could have a slight advantage since it had only been a small turnaround, but he didn't even make the cut for the weekend, which was amazing.
Yeah,
I thought at least make the cut, man. But it was a great weekend of golf. It was the first time in a while that I've actually tuned in and watched and like paid attention. When I have it on it's just in the background and I'll look up every once in a while. But what'd you
mm-hmm.
think? What were your takeaways?
Yeah. I mean, I was wrong too. I mean, it's hard to predict someone to win the green jacket or win any golf tournament, and for that matter. I mean, I picked Justin Thomas, and yeah, he didn't do so hot. I mean, he didn't do horrible. He at least made the cut. We also briefly talked about that. Spieth was playing well. Going into the tournament, he won his first tournament for the first time in 4 years. The week before at the down in Texas, but I think the biggest takeaway is obviously you have Matsuyama, the first Japanese-born player to win the Masters, which is pretty cool. Um, but really, I was hoping and I thought we were going to get almost like a duel type deal coming down in the end, and we were a little bit. Matsuyama gave up a few strokes on the last. I think he was on the 14th and the 15th, and Shoffley, his who was paired up with him, was picking up a few strokes as he was losing a few, and I believe it was Matsuyama hit a went into the water, and then Shoffley hit a birdie on that one, and he closed the gap within two. I think it was Matsuyama was 10 under, and Shoffley was 8 under, and the next hole Shoffley shanked it and went right into the water, and at that point it was pretty much over.
Yeah.
Matsuyama got it together and was able to hold on, and it wasn't as intense as I was hoping it to be, but it was still entertaining. It's always great to have that tournament on in the background. But yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah, he had a hell of a Saturday too. I remember he wasn't. I don't really when I like looking at the leaderboard, he wasn't like consistently shown towards the top. He might have been like tied for sixth or tied for seventh or something like
Mm-hmm.
that going into Saturday, and then he just pulled ahead with a huge lead ending Saturday with being 11 under par. Um, so and then after that, all he had to do was hold on, and that he did
Yeah,
exactly that. The
yeah.
one, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yeah. I mean, it was he held on, and I don't blame him. I would have been a little nervous too. But what were you going to say?
Zolataris.
Yes.
We tweeted about him on Saturday as he was starting his round, and then the commentator talking about how this kid, it was his rookie season at the Masters. The first time ever playing on the course. They were talking about how they could even see him winning, and after we tweeted that out, I was really paying attention to his game, and he definitely was. I think him and the other guy that you mentioned earlier were definitely given.
Shoffley.
Yeah, Shoffling was giving Hideki a run for their money. If he let up a little bit, one of those guys was, yeah, we're going to win the tournament. And it's fun to see someone one that's so young and first time playing at the course. How it's obviously golf is a mind game. If you can stay calm and be confident
Mm-hmm.
in what you're doing, you're going to be pulling ahead of the pack.
Yeah, and I think also playing in Zalatoris, he's almost. I mean, I think I looked it up. I think he's 24. He was almost so young that he didn't really realize what was the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's better to not really fully understand how hard it is to be where you're at, because a lot of guys will play 10, 15 years and might not be that high up on the leaderboard, the Masters, and they get nervous after that long. And he
Mhm.
just comes in the first year and, oh, okay, here I am. I'm
Yeah.
ready to go. So it's good. I hope to see him continue to compete. We need some good, healthy competition in golf, and we're not the biggest golf fans, but a good tournament is always fun to watch.
Yeah. And I'm hoping to see a guy kind of pull, become a brand for golf, kind of like Tiger was in the early 2000s, where, you were going to tune into a tournament because Tiger was going to do
Hmm.
something special. We haven't really had anyone like that since him. Rory temporarily, and then
Yeah,
obviously Spieth when he first came onto the scene. But
yeah,
obviously those guys they're still great golfers, still towards the top in rankings in the world, but they're not able to do what Tiger did.
yeah. And I remember the hype around Spieth. After he won a few, and then it was like, okay, is this the next? Is this the next one? And then I don't know. I don't know what happened between him going from 2017 to now, 4 years. I don't understand. He struggled a whole lot. And I mean, he might have his mojo back now. I don't know. Like you
Mhm.
said, it's a lot of mind games. And I think if you get down on yourself in that game, you're the only one playing. I mean, it's not a team sport. Well, I guess it's you and your caddy, but you have to make the hit, the shots
Mhm.
and the reads, and it's all on you. There's no
Yeah.
one else to pick you up.
And it just goes more to Tiger's greatness, right? Because like
Hmm.
Rory and Spieth, when they were getting the hype, when they first started really performing in these big tournaments, they were pretty young when they were winning those tournaments as well. So
Hmm.
think about all the money that they're winning at that young age. I think their early 20s. Like
Hmm.
obviously when you're that young, like we're still in that age range, we're gonna if we got $1 million+ just for golfing over a weekend for winning
Hmm.
a tournament, and we did that 3 or 4 times in a year, we're probably going to have a pretty good time over the next 3 years until
Oh,
we like sit down and mentally recollect ourselves and like, all right, let's fucking around. Let's get back to what I love. Let's get back to competing in these tournaments. Let's get another green jacket. Let's win more open so that we can get more money.
oh yeah. No, it changed your life overnight. I mean, and speaking of changing your life overnight, there's a lot of kids that are going to have that happen for them in the NFL draft here in just a couple weeks almost,
Yeah.
which is pretty exciting to. And it's hard for me to believe that the Super Bowl's already happened, and now we're knocking on the door of the NFL draft, and it's and then right now we've got the voluntary workouts.
Hmm.
So I'm sure people have seen the news about a handful of teams, the Buccaneers, the Broncos, the Patriots, the Lions, and the Seahawks are all exercising their right to not participate in their voluntary workouts unless they're doing it virtually and holding each other accountable. And that's something I would have never thought I would have ever seen. Um, you know, 20 years, 15 years ago, 10, even 5 years ago.
Hmm.
Um, I find it interesting. I know some older players. I know Tom Brady sometimes. The last few years in New England, he didn't really participate in voluntary workouts because he was hanging out with his wife and children. But it's interesting that a whole team's doing it. I mean, what's your take on it? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm kind of in between. Kind of like you said, it's not uncommon that individuals take OTAs off. They're obviously optional. It's not something that's required. Something interesting I learned today, though, was that some teams build in OTAs, like participating in OTAs and participating in overall workouts for the season, and an extra incentive or a bonus.
Mm-hmm.
So going to OTAs for some wasn't optional because if they didn't go, they didn't meet that percentage of workouts they needed to go. So it cost them money. But
Mm-hmm.
now I think I have two thoughts about it. One, it's either the players are trying to go back to last year. They obviously learned that they didn't need to be on the field going through these walkthroughs and doing reps to perform well in the season. And all they really needed was to catch up on playbook, make sure that they were mentally prepared. And as long as they did their workouts individually, which most of them do, like no NFL player just going to sit around and be lazy because they got to stay. They need to go into camp in some condition that's relatively
Mm-hmm.
good, so that when football season starts, it's they're ready to go. The other thing is, I wonder if they're just trying to pretty much just get more time to themselves and more time with their families because again, being virtual, they have a lot more time to do as they please. They don't get, the Super Bowl for the Super Bowl competing teams. They've only had 2 months off, and then they go right into OTAs. Obviously, for the
Mm-hmm.
for the teams that weren't participating in the playoffs, they've only had 4 months off. So I think it might just be trying to get more rest for their bodies. I know Aaron Rodgers last year going to the season said that because of all this virtual, all the virtual meetings and his self-paced workouts, his shoulder and his body felt way better than they have in a long time. And for these
Mm-hmm.
older players, I'm sure that they're, hoping that the NFLPA and the NFL can come to an agreement so that most of the offseason is virtual, so that they can be rested for when games matter.
Yeah, and I wonder if this is also stemming from the idea of us now having 17 games in an NFL season. I know we did lose a preseason game, but typically, even starters, they only played a handful of quarters
Mm-hmm.
for over the course of 4 preseason games. I mean, they're adding a full four quarter game that's going to mean something at the end of the year. And I wonder, they're extending the season by a week because of it. And it's just more and it's extending it out. And I wonder if that's them kind of like, okay, they agreed to this, years ago, but now we're going to take advantage of a little more time to ourselves. And maybe but the people, the players that aren't the superstars or have the large contracts, more of the on the bubble, on the edge, that aren't going to those voluntary OTAs because their team exercised the right not to. My question is that going to hurt them? Because if you've been in, think about this: the kids that got drafted or were a undrafted free agent last year, they didn't have the voluntary workouts and whatnot. They're not getting them again this year, and now you're going to draft more kids that are going to almost not have the same starting point, but it's interesting that, or it could be tough because they could be taking really a lot advantage of this extra time, and like you said, they might have some incentives in their contract. I don't know. I almost feel like that hurts them more than anything, but they're not going to go against Tom Brady telling them, hey, we're going to do our own thing.
Yeah,
And I mean, you don't have the say when you're that
mhm.
down on the roster.
No, I think you make a good point because it is going to be different. I think last year kind of showed that for those undrafted free agents and those guys that are drafted in the fifth, sixth, seventh round, unless they're performing really well in those, obviously the mandatory practices that'll happen later this year, like they're potentially not going to make a roster. So I think this year it'll be a little bit better for those guys in those situations because we will have preseason games, even though they won't be participating. Some of them, because it's only 5 teams that we know of right now, aren't going to be participating in OTAs at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, they're not those guys that are in the situation. Maybe for the other 27 teams, they might be fine and they'll have some film. The coaches they'll get to know the coaches, but I think at the end of the day for them is as long as they can get on the field for a preseason game so that not just the team that they're on, but that the other 31 teams can get some film on them,
Mm-hmm.
then it'll ultimately benefit them to try to make a roster. At the end of the day, most of those guys are going to be special teams,
Yeah.
unless they can really show out. There's not, uh, there's a lot of guys that do become stars or become good starters that were undrafted, but there's not compared to the number of people that participate in those regional combines or that are drafted. It's not gonna, they're not going to be most of the time they're not going to be stars. So we'll
Yeah.
see how it goes for them.
No, it'll definitely be interesting to see and something worth watching. But Yeah, at least they'll get preseason this year. But if I was a guy on the edge on the roster bubble, I'd probably still be showing up and working out at the facility.
Oh yeah.
But so moving on. Speaking of facilities and playing football, just something quick. It's pretty impressive to see that Jonathan Kraft and Goodell came out and said they expect full stadiums this fall. I'm hoping so. I would like to think that that's going to happen. That adds a different dynamic to the game. You get your home field advantage back. You think of Seattle. I mean, home of the 12th man. I mean, that is home field advantage. Going in the Hawks Nest last year, it wasn't very intimidating. It was just more of the flight out there and a little bit of the time change, and that's about it. And their home field advantage really jumped off or dropped off.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see.
It will be different, and it'll feel like back to normal, right? I don't know. Obviously, there's still months to come before that time comes, but with how quickly everything's changed with this COVID situation, I think Goodell and Jonathan Kraft are right on the money. I don't really expect many cities to have, or I guess teams to have full restrictions on their capacity. They're probably more than likely going to want to make sure that they're able to be packed out to make up for the loss of money that they had last year. But yeah, you're right. Like the home field advantage is going to come back, and the Hawks Nest and the Superdome, like those are some of the hardest places. And Kansas City, those places are going to be rocking again, and home field advantage is going to be a thing. So, we're going to see. I think we might see some drop off in player performance, because now they're going to be going through the challenge of obviously playing the opposing team and trying to play through crowd noise. Because last year it seemed like it was really pretty quiet when they were playing. Obviously, for us watching on TV, it didn't really seem any different other than seeing empty seats, every once in a while when the camera panned to that. But we thought it felt like there was still noise.
Yeah.
But for them, it was really quiet.
Yeah, and it's going to make that number 1 seed even that more important, and we're going to have it even dragging out longer for 17 games. But it'll be something to see. I'm just we can just focus on watching the draft coming up, but it'll be something to monitor.
Yeah.
But I think the last topic we wanted to kind of cover a little bit, just something quick, talking about the draft. I know we're going to do our mock draft coming up here in the next week or two, before the first day of the draft. But I think we agree, and I'm sure Brandon would agree as well if he was here, that Trevor Lawrence is going to go number 1 to the Jags. I mean,
right. Yeah. He already has their playbook. At this point, them having a draft pick as a formality, they've already picked Trevor Lawrence. As soon as obviously on draft day, they're somehow still going to take the full 10 minutes that they get allotted to them at the beginning of the show. But we know it's Trevor. If somehow something changes where it's Zach Wilson or Justin Fields, it might be the biggest story in football since Ricky Williams and the Saints trading 700 picks to get that guy.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see, and Urban Meyer will get his guy, and I'm just excited to see the Urban Meyer show. I don't know what to expect. I mean, he's a great college coach, but it's going to be interesting to see. Not every college coach is a great, makes a great transition. But
exactly.
And then we've got number 2. We've got the Jets. I mean, just a dumpster fire of a franchise. Obviously, moving off Sam Darnold for a handful of picks, sending him to Carolina, which, first of all, I mean, talking about Carolina, I don't know how much of an upgrade that is for them over Teddy Bridgewater. Maybe a little bit, but I don't know. It's just, also Darnold could be a victim of a disaster of a franchise. You just never know what a different scenery looks like. I mean, what do you think Sam's going to do down in Carolina?
I actually think that it is a good opportunity for Sam, and it might be an upgrade for the Panthers. I think it's still TBD, because we've really never seen Sam play football with anything around him. Like, I think the Jets are probably not only a dumpster fire, but potentially one of the worst franchises ever. Like, worse than the Browns. At least the Browns try to win, and they're just not good at trying to win. But the Jets don't. I don't think they understand how you put together a football team. I don't know if you saw it, but Mark Schlereth actually had a video because he went on the Pat McAfee show earlier
Mm-hmm.
this week, and he made a comment about how the Jets fans are just dumb. The organization is dumb because why would you? It was only 3 years ago that Sam was supposed to come in and at the number 2 pick and change their franchise and be the guy that's going to transform the New York Jets. But what help did they have around him? Like they didn't draft a good offensive lineman until last year in Mekhi Becton. They really didn't draft any great weapons. The one weapon he liked to throw to was Rodney Anderson, and they let him walk to Carolina. So last year, when he was playing, was throwing to Jamison Crowder, and he's a good player, but he's not a number
Yeah.
one on any other team. He's a good slot receiver, maybe on a different team, or a good number 2 option.
Mm-hmm.
So, unfortunately, for what it seems like is going to be Zach Wilson, in 3 years, he's going to be gone. Everyone's going to think he's trash because the Jets ruined his career, just like they're going to do to Sam Darnold potentially. And they're going to just be redrafting at the 1 or 2 spot and going for another quarterback. Hopefully, it's just not Spencer Rattler or Caleb Williams because I don't want to see those guys get their football careers ruined in New York.
Yeah, and I remember when we thought, every quarterback that got drafted to Cleveland, it was a death sentence. But, the Jets are so bad that they're not even good at losing. I mean, they had the number 1 pick in the bag, and I get, not, always trying to compete, you don't want to give up. But, dude, I mean, I think Trevor Lawrence is one of the safest number 1 picks in a long time. I mean, maybe since Andrew Luck, but and you just give it away. And, that would be a big storyline over the next 5 to 10 years if Trevor really starts to blossom and does really well in Jacksonville. What could have been for the Jets. But then again, it might not have been great, for him because of just management. It is just a disaster. And, I feel bad for whoever's going to get drafted. I personally think it should be Justin Fields, and I think it will be Justin Fields, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I think Fields is, he's extremely talented, extremely athletic. I know the reports are coming out. They're questioning his character. They're questioning. I think that's just people putting things out in the media or teams that want him to fall to, a little bit lower in the draft for them to get him, at the 8 or 9 spot or the, right in the bottom of the top 10. I think it's more teams that are wanting to get him. And I don't know. Who do you think's going to get drafted? Do you agree, or do you think it's going to be Wilson?
I think that, from what's been reported, and obviously you can never know, but it seems like it's just a foregone conclusion, just like Trevor Lawrence, they're going to be number 1. Zach Wilson will be number 2. I think something that I was thinking about while you're talking about, how Fields, I think I agree. Fields should be the number 2 quarterback. But one thing, if I'm one of those quarterbacks being drafted this year, how great does it feel to potentially go to the 49ers at number 3? Like, you're going to go into a situation where you're ready to win. You have good players around you, an amazing defense on the other side. Really, as long as everyone on the 49ers can get healthy, I don't see why either sitting behind Jimmy G or if you're put in a position to start, why you can't win now. You could be the next Patrick Mahomes, right? Because even if you're not as talented as that guy, if you can get to the playoffs, get to the NFC Championship, get to the Super Bowl, there's going to be that hype. Like, it's going to be Patrick Mahomes versus whoever the quarterback for the 49ers is of the future. And that's just going to be the stories. And if I'm a quarterback that's getting drafted this year, I hope, even if I'm Trevor Lawrence, I hope that somehow the team that, the Jags and the Jets decide they want to go a different direction, and I just slip to number 3. Because at this point, I don't want to be drafted 1 or 2. The Jags, I think, could become a good team because it's Urban Meyer. Don't want to be a Jet, but the ideal situation is going to Kyle Shanahan's offense. It's very easy, very much like the Lincoln Riley offense, where it seems like just do what he fucking draws up and you're going to succeed.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we can both agree that we're going to go, no matter the order. I mean, the top three quarterbacks are going to be Trevor Lawrence, Zach Wilson, and Fields. 2 and 3 can be a little bit up for debate. I do think Lance is going to go in the top 10. I think there's a decent chance he might go number 4. Um, but I mean, Atlanta, they've pretty much come out and said that they're committed to Matt Ryan, which, Matt Ryan's, I think he's still a pretty solid quarterback. I think he's just a product of a lot of young, inexperienced, and not a lot of talent around him. Um, I think they're going to move back. I could see Denver moving up, trying to get him. I believe Denver's at 9 right now, 8 or 9 right now, and for that jump, they might have to give either a second this year or maybe a first next year to make that jump for 4 picks, and that would help Atlanta start replenishing some depth on defense and some other stuff. And I don't know. I know the rumors are that the Patriots might move up to 4 to draft a quarterback. I I don't I don't think they will. I think they're going to stick at 15 and they're going to take the best available talent. I think that's probably going to be a quarterback, or not a quarterback, a wide receiver. Um, you know, I just don't see them making the big splashy move. The move from 15 to 4 is going to cost so much in draft capital. I just I just don't see it happening. Do you see anyone moving up and trying to? I mean, maybe the Bears. I know the Bears have done it, but the Bears are like pick 20. I mean, they're going to need even more to move up there. I don't know.
Yeah, I think you're right with it when it comes to the Patriots. They probably won't move up, at least not to number 4. If they decide to move up, it's because one of those guys, one of those quarterbacks is falling, and they might
Mhm.
like jump to 8 to get right ahead of Denver. The only way I see Denver moving up is if they start hearing like, someone's going to pick a quarterback before our pick. Because
Mhm.
thinking about it, like after the 49ers to the Broncos, those teams just had bad years. Like no one absolutely needs a quarterback this year, but
Mhm.
between the Niners and the Broncos, and even the Niners don't need one, but it seems like they're going to take one. Now,
Mhm.
I think the team that could definitely trade up to that number 4 spot is going to be, maybe I could see maybe the Lions trading up just
Yeah.
because they don't like Jared Goff. It doesn't seem like anyone's really too sold on him anymore. So
Yeah. No, that's true too. That, I mean, I think, what are they? They're pick 7, I
they
believe.
they are right before Denver. So it really just depends on how desperate each team is, because
Mhm.
the Lions also need pretty much any offensive weapon. They're out of receivers.
Yeah.
Marvin Jones walked, Kenny Galladay walked. They have T.J. Hawkinson, and I don't think
Mhm.
that's going to be enough for Jared Goff to be successful.
Yeah.
Um, and honestly, the Lions might even try to trade back because they need so much depth on the offensive side of the ball that they can
Mhm.
they can pick up a receiver in the teens or the 20s. Um,
Yeah.
and it's not going
Yeah.
to make
No.
sense to just get a quarterback.
Yeah, because I mean, 1 is Jacksonville, 2 is the Jets, 3 is San Fran, 4 is Atlanta, 5 is, I'm trying to think, 5 is Cincinnati. They're going to draft Sewell, or Penene Sewell. I forget how to say his name, but the offensive tackle. I believe 6 are the Dolphins. I think the Dolphins might end up taking Kyle Pitts. That's why they moved back up and traded with Philly.
Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah, and then you said 7 was Detroit, and yeah, maybe a quarterback might fall to them, or they very well, they might need to draft Jalen Waddle,
Yeah.
um, or Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith's a little small for a number 1 receiver, but I mean, sizes and everything,
Mhm.
and they could very well take someone there. And Denver's at 8. Denver, they may move up. In Carolina,
So, yeah, I have a correction there for our draft order. So It's 7's Detroit and Carolina, then Denver.
Carolina's okay.
And Carolina, depending on how sold they are on Sam Darnold, they might take a quarterback. I
Okay.
think Trey Lance might be someone that they would consider looking or picking. Um, in terms of needs, I don't. If Kyle Pitts falls to Carolina, I don't see them not taking Kyle Pitts.
Yeah,
But their defense is loaded. They might take a corner, I guess, but they don't need
yeah.
a receiver or anything.
Well, I don't know. Carolina might actually need one because they lost Curtis Samuel.
That's true.
Curtis Samuel, I think, is the part of the football team now.
Yeah, he is.
But so I think if Waddle doesn't get taken, they might take Waddle there. But I mean, we'll go more into our mock draft later. But I think Atlanta. I don't think they're picking at 4 unless they just don't get any offers. They probably will take a corner offensive lineman of some sort. But that's kind of what I'm thinking. I think we should aim for next week, maybe for a draft. But yeah,
Mock drafts will be coming soon. We probably next week once Brandon comes back. We want to make sure that we're all able to put our drafts out there and see who's going to get it right. But I think that's going to be it for this week's show. Like every week, like, comment, subscribe, follow us on Twitter at Two Plane Sports. Just let us know what you think. Give it, help us build this brand to hopefully one day either get picked up by Barstool or be Barstool. So let's get this rolling. But thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next week.
see ya.